Find the y-intercept of the equation y equals 3/4 x minus 5. Also, graph the equation by hand. So let's see what we can do with this one. This is a little bit different than you might be used to, and the fact that there's a fraction in here might be worrying you a bit. But let's not let that freak us out because we can work with fractions. We will find, though, that there's some good values that we can choose for x that will help us to take care of this fraction and just make our work a little bit easier for us. So we're going to choose three values for x and come up with their corresponding values for y. That will give us three solutions to the equation. Those three solutions to the equation will be 3 points on the line that we're going to graph over here. So it's always a good idea to choose x equals 0 for a couple of reasons. One is that working with x equals 0 makes my math easy for me. And also remember, anytime that I have x equal to 0, I'm sure to have my y-intercept. Because if I have a point that's on the y-axis, which is where we would find a y-intercept, here's my y-axis, and here's my x-axis. If I have a point that's on the y-axis, that means that I will have moved 0 in the x direction. My first coordinate of my ordered pair will have to be a 0 in order to make my point on the y-axis. So let's plug 0 in for my x value here and see what the y is that goes along with it. Y equals 3/4 times 0, because my x value I chose is 0, minus 5. Well, now look how easy that makes things for me. This 3/4 times 0, notice that whole thing is just going to zero out on me. That whole thing becomes 0 because 0 times anything is just 0. So that just means y equals -5. Notice that that -5, we could see that right there at the end. So that tells me my y-intercept right away. I know my y-intercept for my line. The y-intercept is, remember to write it as an ordered pair, 0, -5. Okay. Now we need to find a couple of more values to choose. So here's what we're going to do. We could choose any value for x that we wanted to, but there are certain values for x that will make working with this fraction easier. What we want to do is we want to choose a value for x that will allow the denominator to cancel out. We want to choose multiples of the denominator. So let me just make a note of that down here. We're going to choose multiples. So we're going to think about multiplying that denominator out. So 4 times 1, 4 times 2, 4 times -1, 4 times -2. So choose multiples of the denominator. That's what we're going to choose for our x values. So the easiest multiple of 4 is just 4. So let's let x equal 4. Look how nicely this is going to work for us when we substitute 4 in for x. Y equals 3/4 times x, well, we let x equal 4 minus 5. Now remember that 4 we could write as 4 over 1 because any whole number you can just put over 1 to make it look like a fraction. And notice my 4's here are going to cancel each other out. The 4 is a common factor, so those 4's cancel out. And now all I'm left with is y equals 3 minus 5. So y equals -2. So there's another point on my graph. Let's try one more. Let's try if y equals another multiple of 8, so we could, or another multiple of 4, so we can choose 8. We could also go negative. We could choose -4 or -8, but I'm going to go ahead and keep it positive, and let's choose 8 for our next value here. So y equals 3/4, that's still coming from the original equation. Now we're going to multiply it by 8. My x value is 8. I'm going to just go ahead and put it as 8 over 1 minus 5. My canceling doesn't work quite as nicely now, but things are still going to cancel out for me. Here, the 4 and the 8 are going to cancel because they have a common factor of 4. I'm going to rewrite 8 as 4 times 2. So those 4's are going to cancel out. That's going to leave me with y equals 3 times 2, right? This is the 2 that's left over when the 4 factor cancels out of the 8. So 3 times 2 is 6 minus 5, and 6 minus 5 equals 1. So y is going to equal 1. So here are 3 solutions to the equation. That's going to give me 3 points on my graph. So let's go ahead and plot those points. 0, negative 5, we said was the y-intercept. So from the origin, I go 0 in the x direction and negative 5 in the y direction. So that puts me down here. If I go 4 in the x direction, I need to go negative 2 in the y direction because here's the order pair 4, negative 2. So there's 4, negative 2 right there. And then we have the point 8, 1. So there's 8 and 1. So there's my 3 points. And if I've done all of my work correctly, these should line up very nicely when I get my straight edge. So I'm going to grab my straight edge. So there's that. And I'm going to move it down here. I'm going to line it up. My first point here. And then I'm going to rotate it so it lines up with the other points. I'm going to get it to rotate here. And if I've done it right, it should go right smack dab through the middle of all those points, which it looks like it does. I'm going to take my pencil. I'm going to draw my line all the way along there, right through the middle of those points. I don't want it to go beside them. I want it to go right smack dab through the middle of them. Now I'm done with my straight edge, so I can get rid of that. And I'm going to put arrows on each end of my line to show that this line continues beyond just those individual points that I did. I've got all kinds of solutions to the equation that I can show on this line. There's just those 3 are the 3 that I chose to show. So we've done all of the parts we need to do for this particular problem.